You're listening to the all-new CultureCast, Chicagoland's finest podcast. Hello and welcome back to the CultureCast. I am your host, Nick, and with me tonight, the Gorehound.
Hey there, guys.
Hey, Cal, thanks for joining me on tonight's episode. What do we want to talk about tonight?
Well, lately I have been, to say the least, completely obsessed with X-Files, and I have just finished watching the entire series for the first time, and I just finished yesterday, so it could not be more fresh in my mind right now.
The 1990s cult classic, well, I guess it wasn't a cult classic, it was a pretty huge show in its day, X-Files. Did you watch any of the show when it was originally on?
No. My mom watched it like hardcore. She was a total David Duchovny fan, and I just did not care one bit whatsoever. I must have been in high school when it was going, and I didn't watch any TV shows really. And it was I started reading all these graphic novels, and I came across it was just an X-Files graphic novel, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool because it aligned with like my horror interests. Mm-hmm. The graphic novels appeared like a lot more darker than what it actually was, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And after a few episodes of the actual stuff, I was totally hooked. So, how about yourself?
I watched it in its original run.
Yeah?
I got into the show, I think when it really started to become big during the third or fourth year, and then in repeats I went back and watched the earlier episodes, and I stuck through it to the bitter end. I consider myself a fan. I don't think I'd be as a hardcore fan as some other people who were like that back in the day. But no, I enjoyed the show fully back then. I have not revisited it since it left airwaves. So with the exception of maybe the random repeat. But it would be fun to kind of go back and do if not a whole series rewatch, because that's like 202 episodes, but
oh my gosh, yeah, it took me at least a year or two to get through all of these, but it's been totally worth it.
Now, have you seen, I know we'll probably talk about these a little bit later on, but have you also watched both movies?
Oh yeah, I own them on VHS.
On VHS?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know they made the second one on VHS.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome. Those were the only two that I really watched out of order.
Okay.
Because I watched the first few episodes and I watched the movies. Actually, I'd watched the movies beforehand, but and the movies I own, and I just watched them out of order just because it was early on.
Right.
And so over the next few weeks, I'm going to watch those because chronologically they're due right now.
Well, the first movie took place in between one of the seasons. I think in between season 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And then the second movie took place years later, and it was much more standalone than the first movie was. I remember watching the movie when it first came out, which I did not see in theaters. I rented it on VHS. And I remember watching it and thinking, man, if you do not know anything about the show, this movie is just going to be completely lost on someone, just going in cold turkey. The second one isn't like that, thankfully enough.
Yeah. No, I'm really not looking forward to that because I took this so slowly because I was enjoying it so much, and I felt like it was like another version, or it was like another series like Lost, where I was like, this is a perfect TV show, and I have to appreciate it. And so I took it like as slowly as I could because I knew that after X-Files, I don't know what I'm going to watch after this.
If only Netflix had shows on there you could watch, golly.
Yeah. No. It's just there's nothing as good or that grabs my attention as much. So
fair enough. Well, let's go back to some of the tenets of the X-Files TV shows.
Yeah.
The show was both lauded and in later years criticized for its what they call the mythology episodes, in which the reoccurring story arc about the alien abductions, which led into cloning, which led into possible invasion, and all the crazy stuff in between that kept evolving over the years. Felt by many at the time, I don't know if that's still the consensus, that it got a little convoluted for its own good. What are your thoughts on that?
Just the fact that it got so complex, and after a while you really wasn't sure what was happening, is kind of what you're going at?
Kinda, yeah.
And it certainly did. I mean, I didn't feel like it was that intense as what I heard it was, because yeah, there were a lot of episodes where they were just like as confusing as could be, and where like I even fell asleep during a few episodes. But they were interspersed with these Monster of the Week episodes, which were, good buffers. And even though, and it was still enjoyable because it wasn't, 5 episodes in a row of complex story that you're trying to decipher in your own mind.
I almost wonder if a show like The X-Files, which had this long story arc with twists and turns and ups and downs over a 9-year period, works better in a binge watch sort of situation, how you had watched it over
Yeah.
Netflix versus it being a week between episodes over almost a decade.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to wait a week between every single episode and then, a few months in between every season.
Hmm.
Obviously, we're completely spoiled because everybody watched Lost now, just actually, I don't know. Because Lost was coming out when you couldn't really binge watch it.
No, but I think one of the things with Lost is it came out when TV and DVD started to really pick up as a thing, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people bought the Lost seasons so they could like power through them in over a week's time or something like that.
Right, right. Yeah, it took us, I think, like just a few months to get through the entire thing. And, that suspense would have been awful. And it would have, I don't know. We had a group of some friends who they would only watch it and they couldn't really talk to anybody about it because you can't really relate stuff like that to anybody else.
And plus these shows are becoming more and more detailed with like little things that you might forget in between, week 1 and week 2, but when you
Hmm.
watch it like straight through, it's you could pick up on it quicker because your memory hasn't gotten as hazy necessarily.
Right, yeah. And you understand all these complex relationships. You have 9 seasons. So if you jump in and out of a season, it's not that big of a deal because, Mulder is still looking for aliens.
Yeah,
It's pretty much that.
yeah. Let me ask you, besides the mythology episodes, which kind of they were one every couple 5, 6 episodes, they touch on it.
Hmm.
Um, what were your opinion of the Monster of the Week episodes?
I would have just loved to see these Monsters of the Weeks pretty much every episode. I mean, the story was good. I wanted to see Fox find Samantha, like all the time. I just wanted him to be reunited. But I was more interested in, the Scully and Mulder relationship, and I just wanted to see aliens, pretty much. Like, if I saw an alien or it had to do with alien and Mulder and Scully were involved, it was like a perfect episode for me. But then once Mulder or Scully started getting missing from the episodes, it kind of lost it. And like, I honestly think that the worst part about the entire series was the 9th season, where Mulder is completely absent. Um,
Yeah,
have you,
David. Yeah, David Duchovny decided he wanted to leave the show, pursue other options, um, and as such, he was largely absent from the last 2 seasons, more so in season 9 than season 8. But yeah,
yeah, in season 9, I swear he was only in like 10% of the episodes, and I didn't know anything about this because I watched it for Scully, Fox, and Aliens. And when you take out a third of that, it's pretty significant. And then I'm just stuck with Robert Patrick and
Annabeth Gish.
yeah, yeah. And it's like I really don't care about these two. I mean, I'll watch it until I can see Mulder again. Like it was such a downer that last season because I wanted to see Scully and Fox.
Controversial opinion right here. I am actually a bit of a fan of the 9th season in regards to.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's probably not the strongest of all the seasons, but I actually do like um, John Doggett and Monica Reyes, and which is funny because when they introduced Reyes in the 8th season, I couldn't stand her character. I thought they were trying too hard,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
toned back on that in season 9, and I really became fans of those two, and I really do feel the show could have continued on, sort of like a legacy aspect, like how your
Hmm.
Law and Order and stuff has that sort of thing. if the show was bold enough to really cut ties with the Mulder and Scully, like wrap up their story and have these two kind of be the new X-Files, maybe start a new story arc or something like that. I don't know. But
Hmm.
I didn't mind those two.
I mean, they definitely did have they were good. I mean, they were interesting, and I kind of had this pretty much when I saw Robert Patrick, I only saw the T-1000 from T2, and that was enough to he's got respect on my end. He's certainly no David Duchovny, but I'll give him a shot, and he did as best as he could to fill Mulder's shoes. But Mulder is such an iconic character, you can't fill his shoes. You can go off in a different direction, like what they could have done. But I think it was just after 8 seasons of Mulder and Scully and going from, a 90-degree angle from that, it was just, I found it to be, it jumped the tracks.
I somewhat disagree, but I get where you're coming from. And honestly,
Yeah.
I'm in the minority with that. So I fully recognize that people don't care for Doggett and Reyes, and that
Hmm.
ninth season isn't the best. Although I did like that one episode where you thought Doggett was killed, but it was some sort of alternate universe thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was like a really cool, really high concept sort of episode, and those who are followers of the Culture Cast know that I'm a fan of things that are higher concept, just because it gets crazy. But
Hmm. Yeah,
so
and there was one episode where he died, and I was like, are we really gonna bring him back as like a reborn person? But yeah, they did and continued on. There's a podcast out right now which is going through all of the episodes of X-Files, and they're up
oh,
to
okay.
season 4. And I listened to about 45 minutes today, and it was pretty good. A little
Do you know the
sci-fi.
name? Do we want to advertise for this other podcast?
Yeah, because I am certainly going to give it a shot. Some feral audio, Kumail Nanjiani.
Apologies if Kyle just butchered your name.
Yeah. The star from Silicon Valley and the Indoor Kids, reviewing the X-Files episodes.
We'll put that podcast up in the show notes. So if you're interested in checking them out, we'll provide a link for that there.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was very good, and it's just nice to hear somebody talk about X-Files because I can't talk about X-Files with anybody
Yeah,
because
it's not the
nobody
thing
watches it.
anymore. Yeah, it was like hot 15 years ago. More than that actually. Oh my gosh, the show went off the air in 2002. That blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
'cause I could have had the conversation of a lifetime with my mom and watched it, every week with her, but I just didn't care about it then. Did you watch it with anybody?
no, not really. I mean, my dad, like, if it was on and I was there and watching it, he'd, kind of stop and watch it. I think he liked it, but not enough to, like, make it appointment watching.
Yeah,
But,
you'd watch it, but
yeah.
particularly if
But, I
it's.
mean, it's one of those things, like, he was never, like, not disappointed by it.
Hmm.
Because here's the thing with the X-Files is that, and I think they did it really, really well, especially in the earlier seasons, that there was an atmosphere to the show.
Hmm.
Especially on the Monster of the Week episodes. When they're still filming in Vancouver, I think those first 4 or 5 years, uh, it looked more gritty. It had more of a real world feel to it. It wasn't as slick as it
Yeah,
would be.
I found them to be a bit more mysterious
Yeah, that's the perfect
than
phrase.
the later episodes where they really like wanted to describe it as best as they could.
Yeah,
And it's not really necessary. I mean, I'll take Scully's explanation any day of the week,
yeah.
but it's not really absolutely necessary.
I do feel when the show moved its production to LA, something was lost.
Do you know when that was?
I want to say it was either during the fifth or sixth season when they switched production. Let's see if I can look that up really quickly.
No, I never even knew that it happened. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
the quality of the production got better
yeah.
as the years went on, but it was not. I didn't really see any significant change.
The fifth season was the last season shot in Vancouver. and then after that they moved it to Los Angeles.
Mm.
Which, I'm not going to blame the show for doing that. I mean, it's good money. It's probably better production facilities in LA. But I do really like, and maybe it's just nostalgia, but the feel of those earlier episodes. I just think there's something to it that the show kind of shied away from as the longer it went. But,
Yeah.
who am I?
Yeah.
What did you think of the comedy? Because there are a lot of episodes that had a lot of comedic aspects, especially not only the banter between Mulder and Scully, but the just the general comic nature that some of them had.
I thought it was like well balanced. I mean, some of the things that Mulder would say would just be hilarious just because of his character. And it was yeah, I mean, I thought it was very well balanced where he maintained this level of composure and seriousness, and he just threw out these things that were just like he's just like because it shows that he's just like so ingrained in this as if he truly believes everything that he's doing. It's such a great actor.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the comedy too. You're right; it was well balanced, and when they did an outright all comedy episode, be it usually one that was focusing on the lone gunman, they knew how to keep it serious because X-Files still was a drama at the end of the day, but they knew how to do the comedy just right, and that's a tough trick to do. I felt another show that I was really big into at the time was Stargate SG-1. And that show also did comedy very, very well. I just was speaking about The Lone Gunman. Did you know The Lone Gunman has a spin-off?
Oh, I did not know that. I remember I looked them up because spoiler alert, they die like the second episode before the end, and it was I was very disappointed in their death. I thought it was not momentous, and like I was like, oh my gosh.
It was very anticlimactic, and if I remember, they died because there was some like toxic gas that was released, and they had to seal themselves in so the gas wouldn't get out or something.
Right, and it was just like, oh my gosh, you're pushing it, dude.
The scenario seemed contrived. It's funny you bring that up because the Lone Gunman during season 8, I want to say, had a very short-lived spin-off. It was only like, I don't know, maybe 13 episodes long, which it chronicled their daily adventures.
Yeah.
It was much more comedic than the X-Files was. The show did not catch on. I liked it, but I could see why it didn't catch on. Interesting tidbit. The Lone Gunman aired, I think, in the year spring 2001, thereabouts. The first episode chronicled a terrorist attack using an airplane slamming into the World Trade Center.
That is what I saw.
Spooky.
I looked them up as soon as that episode ended, and all of this stuff was coming up, and I was like, what is going on? This series is only $13 on Amazon right now, and I think I'm going to have to get it. It will be perfect to continue this X-Files streak I'm on.
In addition to the Lone Gunman, one of the things that's really impressive about the X-Files, and I don't want to make too much of a blanket statement, but I think they're one of the first mainstream shows to really do this to this extreme effect, but there were an absolute ton of reoccurring characters on that show that were, for the most part, pretty well developed, almost as good as our main cast. They just kept reappearing here and there in really big, strong roles. So it was interesting to see a show do that. Do you feel that any of the characters got sort of lost in the shuffle, or do you think everything was well balanced, or at least as well as it could have been?
I don't know, because I mean, yeah, obviously these characters were completely recognizable, like the Smoking Man or Skinner. But I felt like there was such a good. All the characters were so unique, and I think it was Monica Reyes that I was like I didn't really see her as having a character because she was just so dwarfed by Scully, because Scully was in more episodes than Mulder was.
Yeah,
and so I felt like she was always just in Scully's shadow. Whereas Doggett, he was the male character of the series. not really able to be dwarfed by Mulder because we never see Mulder anymore in
Right.
this last one.
The interesting thing when they introduced Doggett and Reyes is that they were a reverse of what Mulder and Scully was, at least in terms of gender and their outlook on life.
Hmm.
When Doggett came on the scene, Scully became a believer. Like she knew the crazy stuff was out there,
Hmm.
and Doggett was like, "No, no, no, that you're crazy. Stuff isn't real." By the time they sort of decreased Scully's role on the show in the last season, and they focused more on Reyes as a character, she became the believer to keep that, I guess, dynamic going. But they just swapped the genders in order to, I guess, keep it somewhat fresh. I don't know,
Yeah, I can
but
see that.
but yeah, it just didn't. It didn't pick up, I think, the way they wanted it to.
I'm curious, what was your favorite part about watching the X-Files?
Oh my God. That's a great question. Early on, I think when I was younger, I really liked the mythology episodes because I liked
Hmm.
the idea of a reoccurring storyline, which is something that was really rare on TV back in those days. Now it's commonplace. It's weird if a show doesn't have something like that.
Yeah.
But I liked that the show had this evolving storyline that for a good portion of the show really held together. I really like that aspect of it. But now if I look back, maybe the moodiness of it, maybe
Yeah.
the just the whole interplay between Mulder and Scully, because they really did nail those characters very well. I mean, they became like any actor in a long-term role. The actor becomes a character, and the character becomes the actor. Or I would just say like the atmosphere that Chris Carter and company were set out to make.
Hmm.
So, what about you? What was your favorite aspect?
It was pretty much Mulder and Scully. I mean, it was. I started following both of them as much as I could outside of X Files. I mean, David Duchovny has Californication and a few movies out there, and I try to get into those, and they were good, but Californication is just so different
Hmm.
than X Files. I mean, it's still very entertaining, and it's just a lot more adult, not in the I don't know.
Oh, I know what you're saying. It has a heavy emphasis on sex and drugs and things like that. More mature natured shows, I guess.
Right, right. And where, I just want to hear about aliens and where we came from and how they are going to figure out where we came from.
The X Files, despite it being a essentially having a lot of the hallmarks of science fiction or horror, at the end of the day, especially in today's world, it is a family show. It is a show you could sit down with your mom, dad, kids, all of that, and enjoy.
Right,
Parents are
because
going to
there's
be
no
watching.
violence, no
No, yeah,
language.
the violence in there is very TV violence, and it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like Fast Furious things are blowing up. It's more subdued, I guess, than that. If I don't know
Hmm.
if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but
Like the worst thing that you're gonna get is like this really gross looking monster with maybe
yeah,
some blood.
yeah,
But, after you're leading up to it for the whole 40 minutes of the episode, you get a feel of why they're doing it this
yeah.
way.
And that's the great thing about the show is that it didn't need to rely on blood and guts to make it sell. I mean, they
Hmm.
created a mood and characters that you wanted to see that caught you interesting. The drama was there. It sucked people in.
Right, because I think one of the big things about horror movies these days is you have bad, cheap ones and you have really good ones. It's like the difference between like Sharknado and Orphanage, where you can watch both of them just fine and enjoy them, but Orphanage, you're going to get a lot more value out of it, a lot more meaning. Whereas Sharknado, it's just straight up entertainment. You
Hmm.
can jump in and out of that, and you're fine. X Files is like the Orphanage, where the longer you stay in it, the more value you're going to get, and if you stick through it, you're really going to see just how far they've come in developing the story up.
I'm sure you are aware that the X Files is coming back next year
Mm-hmm.
in a what like a
A
mini.
six-part miniseries.
Yes, a 6-part miniseries. So, what are you thinking about this X Files reunion show? What do
Oh, I
you?
was so excited once I heard about that because Gillian Anderson did a podcast on Nerdist, where she just like casually said like, "Yeah, I would totally be down for making this," and I was like, "Okay, sure, whatevs." And then in like the next few weeks, I started hearing more people about it, and before I knew it, they had made the statement that it was coming. I mean, I am like so psyched for this because I feel like they know what made them a success, and they have all the originals. This isn't a remake. This is
A continuation.
a sequel of the exact same characters. I mean, I have a lot of confidence that they'll be able to do it. And even if they don't, it'll be great to see them again.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be fun. So
That's what I hope. I hope at the end of the day it's fun, and I really hope that the fans like it. The one thing that's interesting about this upcoming continuation, I guess, is that, as you mentioned, it is only going to be 6 episodes long, and from news sources and interviews that have come out, it's going to be a mix of standalone and a mix of mythology episodes, which I'm thinking, you only have 6 hours to do this. I feel they're trying to cram a lot in. Now, I don't know. I mean, I could be way wrong. Maybe what I'm hearing isn't going to be the truth at the end of the day. But I'm curious ultimately to see how this thing is all going to play out.
right, because you're not going to see just one episode. Just I don't know. It could prove me wrong, but I would imagine with only 6 episodes, they're going to have some sort of story along it, not like 3 of the 6 being 3 different monsters.
Yeah.
It's going to be a reoccurring thing, which I'm fine with, but we gotta see some weird things.
Yeah. Maybe they'll do like a mix of it. Like each episode will have its own like case that they work on, but like it kind of ties into like a larger picture. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out in 2016. Do you think if this is successful, they'll do a follow-up?
I don't know. I actually read somewhere about that this series was pretty much like a battle between Fox and Netflix, where Fox had created the series pretty much to increase the revenue and interest into X-Files so that they could sell it back to, I don't know, Netflix or Hulu. I know that's already, Netflix obviously already has X-Files right now because that's how I watched it. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of just feeding the fire of the Netflix versus cable companies. So I'm thankful that I have Fox and I can watch it. But if I did not, I would be, I don't know, make some new friends very quickly to watch it every week it's on. What are you looking forward to about the new series?
Well, I guess what I'm most looking forward to is to see how they're going to pull it off. Because I think they have a really open landscape and they can do a lot of different things. But I have no idea how they're going to do it and what they're going to do, which is good because it keeps me as a viewer on my toes. So I am not going to give myself any sort of expectations because only bad things come from that when it doesn't like reach expectations. So I want it to be good. I'm sure I'll watch it. I have no doubts about it. I don't know. I'm going to wait to reserve any sort of judgment till at least I see some sort of trailer to get a better vibe on where the series is going. Yeah. X-Files is coming back next year, and let's see, what's the air date? Original air date, January 24th, 2016.
So what, 6 months away?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly 6 months today, given that we are recording this on June 24th, 2015.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
That's all the thoughts I kind of have on the X-Files. Do you have any final thoughts on anything?
But no, I don't think I have any other comments on X-Files.
I think we've exhausted all of the X-Files. Well, I take that back. There's a ton you could talk about the X-Files, but we'll be on here for longer than Kevin Smith's podcast to go over all of it. So I think that'll do it for tonight then. I'm your host, Nick, along with Kyle, the Gorehound, right here. Thanks for listening, and tune in soon for our next episode. You've been listening to the all-new CultureCast, where every episode is all new. Check out our blog, Zach and Nick's CultureCast, at znculturecast.wordpress.com, and find us on social media. Send us an email at nick.culturecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and requests. Theme music by bensound.com. The all-new CultureCast, a saltwater production, copyright 2015. Do you read any of the comics? I hear there's this big X-File comic that's out right now. Is
I
it?
would really like to, but I'm kind of going on a New Year's resolution where I'm trying to read four environmental classics. And so I basically have 3 months to read. And they're not like easy reads, they're just
Hmm.
like dense and boring. And so I'm like right on track because I still want to read like a lot of fun stuff.
You know what you should do? If you're taking a break from a podcast one day, get the book on tape and listen to it on your car ride.
Finding audiobooks is very difficult because of our location.
I mean, get them from like the library or something.
Well, no, because we don't have a library,
Oh,
uh,
really?
because we live in shithole USA. And our library closed like within 2 months of moving in. So,
That is horrible.
yeah, we don't have access to a library.